Who was Prichard Colón? Boxer dies at 33 after 2015 brain injury, and to understand how a fight inside a boxing ring more than a decade ago could still claim a life in 2026, you have to go back to the night everything changed for a young man who was supposed to be boxing's next big name. Prichard Colón wasn't just another prospect chasing a title shot. He was a Puerto Rican professional boxer and gold medal winner at the 2010 Pan American Youth Championship, a fighter whose hands moved fast enough that people around the sport were already whispering the word champion before he'd even come close to a world title fight. As a junior middleweight, he thrived, building a 16-0 record with 13 knockouts, the kind of unblemished start that makes promoters take notice and fans start paying attention. Every fight seemed to confirm what everyone already suspected, that this was a young man on his way to stardom. But boxing is a sport where one night, one decision inside the ropes can undo everything that came before it. That night arrived on October 17, 2015, inside Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia, when Colón stepped into the ring to face Terrel Williams. Nobody watching that night could have known they were witnessing the last professional fight of Prichard Colón's life, and not because of anything that would happen in a normal sense of winning or losing. As the rounds wore on, something felt wrong. Colón was struck multiple times before eventually being knocked down in the 9th round, but what made the fight so unsettling wasn't just the knockdown itself. He was repeatedly struck in the back of the head, blows that under the rules of boxing are not supposed to land the way they did that night. Anyone who has followed the sport knows that punches to the back of the head and neck carry a different kind of danger than a clean shot to the jaw. And in the moments after the final bell, that danger became devastatingly clear. After the fight, he collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered a subdural hematoma that required emergency surgery. In plain terms, blood was pooling around his brain, and the very thing that had made him such an exciting fighter to watch, his speed, his instincts, his fearlessness, had put him in the fight of his life outside the ring instead of inside it. What followed was not weeks of recovery or even months. Colón went on to spend 221 days in a coma, a number so staggering it's hard to comprehend unless you picture it day by day. His family waiting, praying, watching machines and monitors instead of watching him fight. When he finally did wake up, the young man who once moved with such precision and confidence in the ring could not walk. He could not talk. He wasn't able to walk or talk, and he spent the rest of his life under the near-constant care of his parents. For most people, that would be the end of the story, a tragic chapter closed quietly out of the public eye. But Prichard Colón's family refused to let that happen. Instead of disappearing from public life, they chose to share his journey, documenting his recovery in small, deeply human moments, birthdays, physical therapy sessions, quiet victories that most people take for granted. Over time, people around the world began to know his name not just as a boxer who was hurt, but as a young man who kept fighting in a completely different way, one day, one small movement at a time. And through it all, the questions never really went away. What exactly happened in that ring? Could it have been stopped sooner? Should the fight have been called earlier before the damage became so severe? Those questions didn't stay confined to Colón's family. A former professional boxer had died after suffering a devastating brain injury during a fight more than a decade ago, and the fact that it took over a decade for that injury to finally take his life speaks to just how long and how hard both Colón and his family fought against what happened that night. In the years that followed the fight, the boxing world itself was forced to confront what had gone wrong. In 2016, the WBC introduced what became known as the Prichard Colón rule to discourage and punish blows to the back of the neck, a direct response to what many believe should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. It was a quiet kind of legacy, not the world title he once seemed destined for, but a change written into the rules of the sport itself, meant to protect the next generation of fighters from suffering what he suffered. Behind the scenes, his parents didn't stop searching for answers either. Questions about accountability, about whether the ringside doctor and the promoters connected to that fight had done everything they should have, eventually led to legal action, as his family sought answers about how a routine professional bout could end in a life sentence of round-the-clock care. Meanwhile, the boxer everyone once expected to see holding championship belts spent his days instead in physical therapy, working towards small goals, communicating through assistants, surrounded by a family who never stopped hopping for more progress, more moments, more time. And then, on a Thursday in August, more than a decade after that fight in Fairfax, Virginia, the news finally came. Colón's father, who had also once been his coach and trainer throughout his amateur and professional career, shared the news the way he had shared so much of his son's journey before, honestly and from the heart. He wrote that his son had passed from this world, and that he was now somewhere better, thanking everyone who had sent love and prayers over the years, and asking for continued prayers for the family left behind. He also shared something quietly heartbreaking, that in his son's final days there had been one more wish Prichard held onto, a hope to travel back to Puerto Rico, the place where his boxing journey truly began, one last time. His father said he had tried everything he could to make that wish come true, but it never happened. The exact circumstances surrounding his final days remain private, and the family has not shared further medical details, choosing instead to focus on honoring his memory rather than the clinical specifics of how the years of injury ultimately caught up with him. What remains is the story of a young fighter who, in a single night in 2015, went from being one of boxing's brightest rising stars to becoming, without ever choosing it, one of the sport's most powerful reminders of how dangerous the sport can be when things go wrong. Prichard Colón never got to hold a world title, never got to finish the career everyone expected him to have. But in his own way, he changed boxing anyway, not with his fists, but with the more than a decade he spent showing the world what quiet strength and resilience really look like, and with a rule that now carries his name every time a referee steps between two fighters to protect them from the very thing that ended his career that night in Virginia. He was only 33 years old, and his story is a reminder that some fights don't end when the final bell rings. They simply move somewhere the cameras and the crowd can no longer see, and are fought in silence, day after day, year after year, by people who never stop believing that just one more moment of progress might be worth everything.